Joseph never says a single word in any one of the Gospels, but he might be one of the most important men in the story. I never thought much about Joseph. Mary gets a lot of the attention, Jesus, obviously. Joseph is just kind of there. He shows up, does what he's told, and then disappears from the story. A while back, I started wondering, how old was Joseph? Strange thing is, the Bible never tells us. And more interesting to me, the church has never dogmatically defined it either. So Christians have filled in that blank in very different ways. Broadly speaking, you get two pictures. I think most Protestants picture Joseph as a young man, probably close to Mary's age. They also believe Mary and Joseph had a normal marriage and other children later. Catholics and Orthodox believe Mary remained a virgin her entire life. And especially in the Eastern tradition, Joseph is often pictured as an older widower with children from a previous marriage, more of a guardian than a romantic husband. This video isn't meant to settle that debate. I haven't reached those levels of arrogance yet. What I want to talk about is something more human and I think more interesting. Why do these different pictures exist? And what problems are they trying to solve? Here's the honest tension. If Joseph is a young, newly married man, and Mary is his young bride, then asking him to take her into his home and never consummate that marriage is a very heavy calling. And you can absolutely say, yes, that's the point. Obedience is costly, holiness costs you something real. That's a fair argument. Christianity is full of vocations that cost people their normal lives. That's undeniable. But speaking personally, as a man, as a husband, as a stepfather, the older widower picture makes a lot of things click together in a very human way for me. If Joseph is older, if he's already had a family, if his marriage to Mary is less about youthful romance and more about a deep, protective, mission-shaped kind of love, I think a lot of tensions soften without disappearing. For example, James. In the Gospels, he's called the brother of Jesus. The Greek word used is adelphos, which can mean a biological brother, close male relative, kinsman or clan member, or in some contexts, something like a close family relation. In this picture, James would fit very naturally as a stepbrother. Thinking about it this way also removes a kind of mental friction I used to have with Mary's perpetual virginity. And personally, it becomes much easier to envision how that could be lived inside a real household. There's another detail in this story that stands out to me. Notice how Joseph reacts when he first learns Mary is pregnant. His response is calm, restrained, and merciful. He plans to handle it quietly without shaming her. Maybe that's just the culture of the time, but when I read that, it sounds like the response of a seasoned man who has already lived, suffered, and learned how to carry a heavy burden. There's another layer to this that I've noticed. I've heard priests talk about Joseph with real affection, and that makes sense. A celibate priest naturally resonates with a Joseph who lives in proximity to a woman, carries real responsibility, and yet renounces sexual life for the sake of a mission. Meanwhile, married men often resonate more with a Joseph who looks like a normal husband and father, And guys like me, stepfathers, guardians, men who've taken on responsibility for children that aren't biologically theirs, we see yet another angle. And that makes me wonder, maybe Joseph is left deliberately quiet. We don't get his words, we don't get his age, we don't get a lot of details about Joseph. All we really get is his obedience. Maybe that's on purpose. Maybe Joseph is open enough that all kinds of men can see themselves in him. The provider, the protector, the guardian, the man who accepts a life he did not plan. Whether he was 20 or 60, that part doesn't change. And maybe that's the deeper point. I think that's the right place to leave Joseph, not as a solved puzzle, but as a model of a man who took on a mission he didn't choose, protected who he was told to protect, and quietly carried a burden that changed the world.